sporadic contests where they might, like, the first time they let a woman compete professionally, she was put out in a heat with men. Her name was Laura Blears, and I can't give away too much, but she's just amazing stories. I get really excited when I'm able to reach out to these people, because we all know, like I said, what happened, but the world doesn't know. And there was this incredible, back then, to answer your question, it's just like this pioneering spirit. And even though we competed against each other, the bottom line was we all wanted to make this happen. And we were all willing to go out in waves that, I wouldn't have normally chosen to go out on that day, but guess what? If I wanted to be a part of it, that's what you got to do. And then after a while, what was not normal becomes something you enjoy. So that's what I really learned from that was the challenge. If you give it a chance, you'll be able to do it. We all supported each other as much as we could. There was definitely struggles with finding sponsorship, especially that first year, because there was no history for us to go, say, with a proposal like, would you sponsor me? Because, see, this is what you're going to get out of it. There was, we didn't really know, but...
No precedent.
No one did.
You
at
were
that
pioneers.
Time, really.
We were the pioneers. But I got on the plane in Los Angeles. So Randy Rarick set up this tour, and it was scheduled to go first to South Africa, then to Brazil, then back to Los Angeles, then to Australia, and then to Hawaii for the grand finale. So, that's not a round-the-world trip. That's a bit of zigging and zagging. And but to be honest with you, there was a group of 30 of us, men and women, and we were the ones that stuck it out for the whole year. So there were some people that would come on in different segments, but there's really was a really strong camaraderie among us, and there's always a competitive side, but you can leave that when you get out of your heat. You're not. They are the most wonderful friends that I have made and have to this day. And that's why I want to make sure none of them are forgotten. And, I'm concentrating on the women because that we had an extra special challenge in that we were not getting the media coverage. So I hope that I'm answering your question, but
Well, what was it like with the men then, traveling with the men on tour? Were they giving you equal respect? Would they say things like, especially when they got coverage in the magazine and you wouldn't, like, would you guys say anything to them? Like, kind of curious, like, how that type of relationship worked between the men and the women on tour.
Yeah, that's a great question, because what really became relevant was that it was a regional. In Hawaii, there's so much respect for women because it's embedded in their culture. When I ended up going back to college, and I studied the Hawaiian language for 4 years, and then I also the culture. When in Rome, that saying, it's really true. So learning their culture and their whole society was women owned the property. Women got to surf first, and the women were the best surfers. That's written in what little written documentation there is from, they were, their language was oral. They had, everything was saved by song and everything like that. But it's embedded in their society that the women ruled the waves. And they had the utmost respect for women. And that carried on in the generation that I traveled with. People like Michael Ho, Dane K. Aloha, Buttons, all those guys, they were just for me and all the other women, I'd rather surf with them than anybody else, because they would hoot and holler and encourage us to surf the big waves and help us. Like, I can't even tell you, Reno Avalira, I remember being out at sunset, and I was scared to death. I'm not going to lie to you and tell you I wasn't scared. I was like, come on, man. And I'm like, and Reno's he's an intuitive guy, He's looking at me, and he's like doing this nodding thing. And I was like, what? Is he trying to pick me up? Or what's going on here? And I'm like, no, he was showing me where the takeoff spot was.
Like right there.
He lived at the point there. And just like, he's not a man of many words, but just like his actions. And this was true not just for me, but Lynn. We all experienced the same things out there. The big surf, especially the Hawaiian men, would always help us, always have our backs, even rescue us if that was necessary. We didn't have jet skis. We didn't even have leashes like the first 2 years. So, it was, so in answer to your question about how the men treated us, there's a big difference between surfing with a group of Hawaiian men and surfing with a group of California men who are trying to make their name in Hawaii, because they didn't get treated as well as the women just in that one spot. Though, the rest of the world, Brazil was very welcoming of women too. Like, that was a really fun place to be a female surfer. Like, they were, I think it's part of their culture as well. The indigenous people, and how they're coastal cities, so their lives are going to be built around the ocean, and it's Mother Ocean. What can I say?
Do you think some of that changed? As I know, in the late 70s, the women's prize money actually it went down after the inception, right? So as we approached the 80s, women's prize money started to sink, while the men's exponentially grew. Did you find that had any correlation to maybe this kind of different culture that started to grow in Hawaii and in the water, and certainly as you started to do further tours?
Well, I think I can answer that. The IPS was run by Hawaiians, Randy Rarick and and Fred Hemmings, and then the Australians, PT and Ian Caron, took over in '82 with the ASP, and that's when everything kind of went to kind of crap for the women's tour, unfortunately. Am I correct in that, Sandy?
Yes, there definitely is a correlation. And I just happen to have this little handy dandy book here, which you can't see, but it has, the prize money dropped to $10,000 for the whole year for the women in 19. So you got 30 women who are supposed to go travel to South Africa, Brazil, all these places, and you've got $10,000 for 30 of them. It doesn't really add up or work out very well for the women. So yes, you're right. The Hawaiians were in charge when the IPS. I don't know what happened politically because I wasn't involved in the male political part of it. We were always fighting for more money for the women just so we could continue to participate. It wasn't, it's just say this way, in the beginning we thought we were going to be like tennis was, where the women, were getting equal pay to the men. We thought we were going to be, rich and famous or something, but we'd have to prove ourselves first. But that's, it's happening now, which is really cool to see. But it was a struggle back then. A lot of the women had parental support, like Lynn did, and her father was a surfer, so he got it, he understood, and it was taken over by the Aussies, and I think it was an unfortunate time period for women surfers. Basically we had to go get full-time jobs unless your parents or you had the top two could probably get their way paid to the events, but not enough to buy a home or have security in your life financially. So the upside of that, though, I have to say, when you travel very frugally, you end up meeting some of the nicest people around the world, because they they didn't know the whole story, but they knew that it had to be hard. And so, the Boyer family, the Benson family, like their parents made it possible for me to compete in Hawaii. Because when I got there, they welcomed me into their homes like one of their own. And, even though we competed against each other, we also practiced with each other. Lynn Boyer is famous for getting up at 4:30 in the morning and, going to the North Shore and finding the biggest surf to practice on. And I shadowed Lynn, I'm not ashamed to say it. Like, I just, after seeing her surf sunset that day, I was like, you know what? Yeah.
I want what she has.
Pardon me?
I want what she has. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. So I want to do that and not be shaken in my boots, just like, but we did have a lot of fun. We did have some struggles. The wonderful thing now, I think I like what you brought up about documenting all of it, because right now what I'm working on is getting, everybody's writing books now, but guess what? The guys that are writing the books are the ones that told the photographers not to shoot us. So
Jim
I'm a
Kempton?
little... Huh? Yeah, let's not mention any names, but
Why not?
okay, we can.
Accountability.
How they told
Right.
them not
I
to
don't
take
know.
photos,
Okay,
and
you
now they're
don't have to.
profiting off them.
Yeah. I'm sorry. You got me there. Yeah, I don't know. So there's some really good things happening, and we're gonna have it in print. It's gonna be copyrighted.
Oh,
I
that's
promise
amazing.
you, it will not get lost. Like, I'm not
Yes.
gonna let it happen.
So excited! I cannot wait to consume it all. Can you share with us your contemporaries? Because I feel like, with surfing, there are generations and there's something unique. I mean, I don't know if you've seen the film that just came out, Girls Can't Surf, which is more, later in its years. Yeah. And I would love for there to be some kind of film of your generation. But I feel like there's
a movie of that, by the way.
What's
Yeah,
that?
let's
I want
do
a
that.
theatrical
Let's do
movie
that.
of that,
Give me some of
you
your
know?
New Yorker context. Come on, let's go.
But the different kind of generations, like who are your contemporaries, and what were kind of like the dynamics, the personalities?
My fellow competitors, you mean?
Yeah, and the people you traveled with, especially at the first in '77, the women.
Oh yeah, we all had really people who compete. Am I talking too loud? Let me know if I'm talking.
Oh no,
you're
not
good.
at all.
Okay. Yeah. So athletes who compete are not, generally speaking, quiet people, or not this quiet, but you have a sense of adventure is the best way I can say it. And so we all had this sense of adventure, but we all came from different backgrounds. It's it was a lot of unique personalities, but somehow it all worked. We'd have little squibbles and squabbles over things that weren't, very deep or,
You didn't have priority buoys, so I imagine
Right.
that was a little bit of an issue sometimes.
It was a free for all. It was a free
Yeah.
for all. And basically the structure of competing was whoever got the best waves won. So if the judges were paying attention, which is a whole nother subject, but we had to overcome. I think the fact that as a group we had to overcome the being discriminated against. There was certain areas, like I said earlier, where it was harder than others. Like I ended up living in Hawaii for 20 years just because they were so nice to me. It's like not only that, there was a lot of jobs, and surfing is embedded in the culture there. It's it's an island, so there was always this duo between Margot and Lynn, without a doubt. Like they did not travel together.
Interesting. Ooh.
Yeah, it would be like expecting, same thing with the men. It's not just a woman thing. It's just if you're number one and number two, and you're not sure who's going to win, you're not going to, jump on a in a car to drive 1,500 miles to the event you're going to compete against. Somebody might get killed on the way down there, you know.
or be like, oh, here's a bar of wax, and it's really soap, like rabbit.
Yeah, there was some of that happened, but